Coming up on Valley View News, the Thousand Oaks community restores native plants in the Santa Monica Mountains.
We're engaging with the community, but we're also meeting our goals.
Plus, learn about a national landmark made by a 60-year-old woman.
There were 13 buildings to start, and now there's 5 that are still standing.
And what's in a martial arts museum?
I found it to be wonderfully fantastic.
Hello and welcome to Valley View News. I'm Jesse Barrientos.
And I'm Giovanni Galvez.
Congresswoman Karen Bass leads the LA mayoral race with more than 9,000 votes over developer Rick Caruso. The LA County Clerk reports Bass with 50.8% of the vote. Caruso has 49.2% as of this week. Bass would be the first African-American woman to be mayor. Caruso's team says it's optimistic and looking forward to the final results. Thousands of ballots remain uncounted. A winner won't be determined for weeks. Updates are announced every Tuesday and Friday. Both candidates promise to grapple with the city's homeless crisis.
Public schools will get $1 billion for arts and music programs thanks to Proposition 28. 28 passed with 61.6% voter approval. Former LA School Superintendent Austin Butner says it's a big step forward for public education. The proposition creates an annual funding stream for K-12. The state now must give 1% above what's legally required to fund the program. Schools in low-income areas are prioritized for funding.
Graduate students, workers at the University of California system voted to strike. Their unions represent more than 48,000 workers. They want more compensation, childcare, reimbursements, better job security, and stronger disability protections. The union claims that at least one researcher lived out of their car last year. The strike was authorized after 6,000 workers voted to strike after more than 20 unfair labor practices were filed. The claims include the University of California's refusal to change working conditions. The University of California hasn't commented.
LA health officials told people to stay out of the ocean due to high levels of bacteria. They said the levels are high because of rainwater flowing to the ocean. The department said to avoid storm drains, creeks, and rivers. It said bacteria levels tend to increase up to 3 days after rainstorms. Bacteria result in illnesses, especially in children and the elderly. The Ocean Water Quality Rain Advisory lasted until Thursday.
California Water Watch says the drought will affect everyone as usable water declines. It says in the next 2 decades, the state could lose 10% of its water supplies. 2019 was the second driest year for the state. Some farmers say the drought is worse for them because they must follow strict water rules. The rules protect plants and animal species that are at risk of extinction. Farmers complain that laws let huge amounts of water into the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta instead of the other lands. The Center for Biological Diversity says the laws have been more than 99% successful.
In Thousand Oaks, some volunteers are putting their green thumbs to good use. Valley View News' Camille Acevedo visited a nursery that restores plants.
On Fridays and Saturdays, the Santa Monica Mountains Fund uses volunteers to help with plant restoration at the Native Plant Nursery. Assistant Nursery Manager Carla Gonzalez works with the volunteers at the Rancho Sierra Vista Nursery.
They could help us to grow these plants, transplant them, and that way we're engaging with the community, but we're also meeting our goals.
Volunteers help process cuttings, transplant seedlings, sow seed flats, weed, water, and fertilize. More than 50,000 native plants are being grown for restoration.
It's always great to do something that contributes to the environment, whether or not it's the physical environment or the social environment. You're part of the ecosystem.
30,000 out of the 50,000 plants here are Stipa pulchra, the purple needlegrass. The team has worked on this project for about 1 year. People that volunteer at least 2 hours of their time will receive 2 free plants to take home and plant themselves. This is Camille Acevedo in Thousand Oaks for Valley View News.
Eligibility for Covered California has changed so that more people can join. The program gave discounted health insurance to people who had employer insurance. Employer plans increased the cost of covering a family. That created the so-called family glitch and forced many families to go without health insurance. Next year, if a family premium costs more than 9.12% of their household income, they're eligible for federal subsidies or discounts with the program.
Required face masks may make a return to LA County since the RSV illness and 2 new COVID variants are prevalent. Director of LA County Department of Public Health, Barbara Ferrer, says hospitalization and COVID cases are rising. She strongly recommends wearing masks indoors. The RSV respiratory illness has spiked among children. LA County reported a high number of RSV cases than previous years. County officials want parents and guardians to watch out for the children experiencing any difficulties breathing. Health officials are still encouraging booster shots and flu vaccines.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said California's flu activity is high. Recent data shows flu cases spiked the last week of October. The highest flu activity is in Orange, San Bernardino, San Diego, Riverside, and Imperial counties. The CDC said Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, North and South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia are also categorized as very high in flu cases. All cases were reported in the past month. The CDC said flu hospitalizations haven't been this high since the 2009 swine flu pandemic.
Some Southern California hospitals are using overflow tents to cope with the rising number of patients. The tents are built outside emergency rooms to help cope with increased flu and respiratory illnesses. Hospitals in San Diego reported a jump in flu cases. It's higher than 471 reported last year at the same time in San Diego. The rest of the state have more flu cases this year than compared to last year. Cases are 12 times higher than what was reported in 2019 nationwide.
LA County issued a cold weather alert. It affected the Antelope Valley and the Santa Clarita Valley. People were reminded to not to use stoves, grills, or ovens to heat their homes. A healthcare official says children, the elderly, and people with disabilities are most vulnerable to the cold. Families should always check on loved ones with disabilities during cold weather. Finally, the LA Homeless Service Authority's winter shelter program is open to those in need.
Rental assistance is being offered to residents in Echo Park area. Our reporter Zena Taher was in Echo Park to investigate.
LA City Councilman Mitch O'Farrell has put aside $3 million in rental assistance funds for his constituents to ease the housing crisis. He represents the area by Echo Park Lake, which became filled with homeless encampments during the pandemic. One visitor who declined to provide her name has lived in LA for 80 years.
I don't think it's enough. And another thing, I think we need to get, I think a lot of those people are sick. We need to get them some help, some mental help.
Some Echo Park residents pointed out that rental assistance is only available to people making very little income. Leanne Mitchell waits tables, but they make too much money to qualify for assistance.
I think it is pretty low, but only because rents are so exorbitantly high. I think anywhere else it would be perfect, and I just think every little bit helps.
SIDNEY, an Echo Park resident who declined to provide her last name, agrees.
There's no limit to how many programs can be put in place to help people.
Deborah TRACY has lived in Echo Park since the 80s.
The $3 million I think will help the people that are already in housing. I really don't know how much it will prevent more homeless from going on the street.
Councilman Mitch O'Farrell's office did not respond to a request for comment. Applications for the rental program will be open through November 4th. Reporting from Echo Park, I'm Zena Taher.
The IRS still needs to give 9 million people their stimulus payments, the Earned Income Tax Credit, or the Child Tax Credit. Many of the people didn't get their payments because the IRS didn't have their information. The free filing tool is open for an extra month. The deadline is November 17th. The people who are owed benefits should file electronically to get their money faster.
An estimated 95% of prisoners serving time in California will eventually be released. Statistics show that 2/3 of them will reoffend and return to prisons within 3 years. But the state hopes to change that by treating prisoners more civilly. For one thing, they would be addressed by their names and not by the numbers. The idea is that punishment should be a loss of freedom and not a loss of dignity. Also, guards can interact with prisoners by playing board games and taking long walks with them. This isn't like the Norwegian model where inmates live in dorm-like cells that sometimes include recording studios. The California plan is still in its infancy. Officials say that the goal is to add more changes to the prison system.
Since there's a huge demand for flights during the holidays, experts say the best travel deals are already gone. On social media, some travelers complain about being hit with higher prices. October travel rates were up 43% from last year. Meanwhile, U.S. airlines reported combined profits for more than $2.4 billion in the third quarter. Airlines say part of the reason for higher costs is that airlines are still operating fewer flights than in 2019, while passenger numbers are back to pre-pandemic levels.
Gas prices are slowly going down as Thanksgiving approaches. For 5 straight weeks, the prices dropped to almost $1 below record levels. The average price for self-served regular gas in California is $5.46. In Los Angeles, the average price of self-serve regular is $5.53, 87 cents less than last month. AAA mobile app allows people to check the nearest and cheapest gas prices in their area. Thanksgiving is when more people travel with their vehicles.
Thanksgiving is nearly here, and there's a nationwide turkey shortage. Avian influenza, inflation, and cutbacks from turkey farmers 3 years ago hurt turkey production this year. The bird flu killed 7.3 million turkeys. Outbreaks happened in 42 states after migrating birds dropped contaminated feces. The decline in turkey production started before the COVID pandemic. The average price of an 8 to 16 pound turkey is about $1.99 per pound, a 73% increase from last year.
The Simi Valley Police arrested the ex-husband in the death of Rachel Castillo. She was reported missing last week. Castillo's remains were discovered Sunday in a remote Antelope Valley location. Her ex-husband Zarbab Ali was arrested Sunday afternoon at his parents' home in Victorville. The couple has a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. Castillo's sister called 911 after seeing a significant amount of blood at their apartment. Castillo was 25.
Former Tonight Show host Jay Leno was treated at a Los Angeles burn center after being seriously burned and injured in a car fire. TMZ reported that Leno was in his Los Angeles garage when one of his cars burst into flames. Sources told them the left side of Leno's face was burned. The flames didn't hurt his eyes or his ears. Leno was scheduled to appear in Las Vegas Sunday. It was canceled after the accident. The comedian says he needs a week or two to get back on his feet.
The U.S. Attorney's Office announced that former Los Angeles Dodger outfielder Yasiel Puig pleaded guilty to a charge of lying to authorities. He allegedly bet on sporting events. This was part of an illegal gambling operation. This crime could carry up to a maximum sentence of 5 years in federal prison. Puig agreed to pay a fine of at least $55,000. The outfielder is currently playing in South Korea.
More to come on Valley View News. Mexico has unrest, and Black Friday may bring relief for the economy.
It's going to take more than just us. It's going to take the community, the world, to help us make a change.
My name is Gary Parker. I served as a Cavalry Scout and a military policeman in the United States Army for 20 years. When I was a Cavalry Scout, we had a young lieutenant that came in. Great guy, but he moved on, got promoted to lieutenant colonel, went on to Afghanistan, and I was able to keep in contact. And I'd wake up one morning, go on social media, and there's that post you don't want to see. For whatever reason, he took his own life. Nobody knows why he did it. And if there's something that we could have done to prevent it from happening, safe gun storage can prevent gun suicide, because it's that added step to get to your firearm that might just give somebody a moment of reflection on what they're doing. As a veteran, we need to be ambassadors to people that don't have the knowledge that we have. Anytime you're not storing a weapon safely, you're putting yourself and your community at risk. Service never stops.
For a look into international news, here's Andrea Gonzalez in our Digital Media Center.
Iranian security forces killed 326 protesters. 43 children and 25 women are included. Protesters were sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini. The 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman was detained by police for not wearing her hijab properly. She later died in custody. Protesters want someone held accountable for her violating Amini's human rights. A cruise ship with hundreds of COVID-positive passengers arrived in Sydney, Australia. The Majestic Princess cruise ship was halfway through its 12-day voyage when the outbreak began. The ship was carrying around 5,000 passengers and crew. About 800 of them tested positive for COVID. Those who tested positive had mild symptoms and had to isolate for a 5-day period. China's military flew 36 fighter jets and bombers near Taiwan. Taiwan says 10 of these aircrafts flew across the line Taiwan uses to separate itself from the mainland. China stepped up efforts to intimidate Taiwan by conducting military exercises near the island. That included firing missiles into the sea and using surveillance drones. A bomb rocked a busy pedestrian street in Istanbul last week. 6 people were killed and dozens were injured. Panicked people fled and hid in nearby cafes and shops. Emergency vehicles rushed to the scene on Istanbul Avenue, a popular street lined with the shops and restaurants that led to the iconic Taksim Square. The explosion was a reminder of when, not too long ago, Turkey was often experiencing bombings. People in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, were happy to see gas stations opening. It's been 2 months since powerful gangs started a crippling fuel blockade. People pushed their cars and motorcycles to the nearest gas station and lined up next to the mini commuter buses known as tap-taps. Ever since the gang known as 6G9 took control of the area near a key fuel terminal, life in Haiti became paralyzed because of a lack of fuel. Many Mexicans protested against President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's plan to overhaul the nation's electrical authority. The president dismissed them as a people who favor privilegism, racism, and classism. The president said the protests were the biggest in his 4 years in office. About 50,000 to 60,000 people protested. Protesters fear that López Obrador's proposal will compromise independence in order to benefit his party. The plan eliminates start-level electrical office and cuts public financing of political parties. It will reduce the number of legislators in the lower chamber of Congress from 500 to 300. Germany will nationalize Russian natural gas giant Gazprom. It'll cost $13.44 billion. The plan should guarantee energy supplies for Germany for the time being. The government is unsure whether it sell parts of Gazprom to private companies in the future. Back to you guys in the studio.
Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen's art collection sold for $1.5 billion. Christie's Rockefeller Center said it's the most valuable private collection sale of all time. Multiple of the works sold broke world auction records. The sale boosted the lagging art market. All proceeds from sales go to philanthropic causes championed by Allen.
Speaking of art, a historical site made of bottles from the 1950s still stand. Our reporter David Reyes explored it.
Grandma Prisby's Bottle Village. This isn't a typical art site. It's a landmark built in 1956 by a 60-year-old woman named Tressa Prisby, or Grandma Prisby. Preserve Bottle Village Committee board member Francie Rewald says this was all handmade.
Actually, her hands mixing the cement in some type of a bucket. And then her sister actually said, why don't you use this? She gave her a trowel and a wheelbarrow.
Grandma Prisby's Bottle Village is recognized by the federal government and the state of California as a historic site. It's well preserved, even though it was damaged by the 1994 Northridge earthquake.
Well, there were 13 buildings to start, and now there's 5 that are still standing.
Another board member, Drew Kennedy, says Grandma Prisby's art helped her deal with tragedies in her life. Now she wants to help others going through tough times.
I think it would be fabulous for us to, at some point, collaborate with different groups for that purpose, for people to be able to have a center to come to.
A little fun fact that Drew and Francie told me was that when Grandma Prisby would give tours around the Bottle Village, she would always offer her tourists freshly made lemonade. For Valley View News, I'm David Reyes.
Being Elon Musk might not be so easy. In a Zoom meeting for the B20 Business Forum in Indonesia, the multi-billionaire told entrepreneurs to be careful what they wish for. He added that his workload has grown a lot since buying Twitter. He tortures himself with the amount of work he does for Tesla and SpaceX. Musk talked criticism he got after firing dozens at Twitter. He said there's no way to make everyone happy. He reassured companies the advertisement won't damage their brand and vowed to ease speech restrictions.
Cryptocurrency trading firm FTX is short billions of dollars after experiencing the crypto equivalent of a bank run. They sought bankruptcy protection and the CEO and founder has resigned. The firm says there was unauthorized access to some funds that disappeared. The analyst said hundreds of millions of dollars may have vanished. Many customers fled the exchange and fear that FTX didn't have enough capital on the hand.
It has been a tough year for American consumers. Soon a lot of data will be coming out that gives important clues about the economy's health. A slew of retailers will release earning reports since the government announced retail sales figures for October. The most recent consumer price index figures from October indicates some relief for shoppers' holidays. The pace of year-over-year price increases slowed more than expected. It sparked a massive stock market rally last week.
Amazon founder Jeff Bezos says he'll give away most of his $124 billion network while he's alive. Bezos would devote most of his wealth to fighting climate change and supporting people who unify humanity. Otherwise, he was light on specifics about what else he would do with his money. Bezos was criticized for not signing the billionaire's giving pledge. The billionaires pledged to donate the majority of their wealth to charitable causes.
Amazon plans to lay off more than 10,000 employees in corporate and technology jobs. The New York Times and the Wall Street Journal reports the layoffs are expected this week. It will primarily be in the retail division and human resources. There is also paused hiring. The company hasn't commented on layoffs. The new Amazon distribution center in Clay, New York won't be affected. The center is one of the largest warehouses in the world with 2,500 full-time workers.
When we come back, Dave Chappelle talks about anti-Semitism on SNL. Also, Black Panther Wakanda Forever becomes the second biggest opening of the year. Stay with us. You go straight to 3.
In terms of hate crimes, I think there is so much more work to be done to make that choice to continue to love.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Dolly Parton got Jeff Bezos' $100 million award. The country singer is the latest recipient of Jeff Bezos' Courage and Civility Award. Parton is known for her philanthropy. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she donated $1 million to Vanderbilt University medical vaccine research efforts used to help Moderna's COVID vaccine. Bezos said the prize money has no strings attached. In 1998, Parton established the Dollywood Foundation. The Imagination Library program helps children across the world access books.
In a recent SNL episode, Dave Chappelle addressed the recent anti-Semitic comments made by Kanye West. He opened up his stand-up by denouncing anti-Semitism in all its forms, stated that he sees how West would believe that Jews run the TV business. However, West is crazy for saying it out loud nowadays. The comedian says he waited to see public response to West's statement. Chappelle also brought up former President Donald Trump and Herschel Walker, along with confronting negative reactions towards jokes he made about transgender people. Chappelle ended the monologue by admitting he is scared of talking about sensitive topics and hopes he won't be canceled.
After his latest movie, Hustle, Adam Sandler talked about being drawn to playing unlucky characters, losers as he would call it, adding that he always pulled for the guy that is struggling because they are relatable to the average person. Then when we see them grow up. Much of Sandler's comedies come natural, but he has the background to do serious work. He expressed that he admires a character who does not give up.
The box office came back to life with the long-awaited release of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. The Marvel sequel earned up to $180 million in ticket sales from more than 4,396 theaters in the U.S. and Canada. Estimates from Walt Disney Company says it is the second biggest opening of the year behind Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Overseas, it brought in an additional $150 million.
The Los Angeles Lakers snapped their 5-game losing streak by beating the Brooklyn Nets 116-103. Lakers star Anthony Davis had a big night, scoring 37 points and grabbing 18 rebounds, as well as Lonnie Walker IV scoring 25 points. Russell Westbrook had 14 points and 12 assists off the bench, while Nets superstar Kevin Durant had a near triple-double with 31 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists to lead the team. The Lakers are now 3-10 after the win. They are still second to last in the Western Conference.
The Los Angeles Rams lost to the Arizona Cardinals at home 27-17. Rams had a rough first half, being down by 14 points at halftime. They were able to cut the lead in the third quarter, but weren't able to take the lead in the fourth as the Cardinals scored 10 more points. Second-string quarterback John Wolford started for LA as Matthew Stafford was out with an injury. Wolford had 215 total yards, throwing for 1 touchdown to Van Jefferson and throwing an interception. Darrell Henderson had the team's second touchdown and had 21 rushing yards. Rams have a 10 a.m. game in New Orleans next Sunday against the Saints.
The San Francisco 49ers moved to 5-4 after beating the Los Angeles Chargers 22-16. The 49ers trailed at halftime 16-10. Their defense began to play better. Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert threw for 196 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception, while 49ers quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo threw for 240 yards with no touchdowns or interceptions. The Niners have won 2 games in a row and now are 1 game behind being in the division lead in the NFC West.
The World Cup is back. The international soccer tournament is returning after its Russian stay in 2018. The opening game will be between tournament host Qatar and South America's Ecuador Sunday morning. The World Cup will go on until December 18th. The earliest game will be at 2 a.m. and the latest games will be at 11 a.m. USA hopes to make top two out of their group stage in the first round that has England, Iran, and Wales. USA, Mexico, and Canada will host the next World Cup in 2026.
The Martial Arts History Museum in Burbank is trying to preserve and educate the history of the fighting style. Our reporter Max Osborne took a stroll around the museum.
This is Iceman's shorts.
When people think of martial arts, they tend to think of action and violence. And while those are present, martial arts is also culturally and philosophically rooted. The education and preservation of martial arts is one of the main goals of the Martial Arts History Museum in Burbank. Michael Matsuda is the president of the museum.
The mission, I would say, of this museum is to demonstrate Asian art, culture, history, music, and how it connects with the martial arts.
The museum has multiple displays that inform visitors about prominent details. It also aims to create more awareness about the Asian community. Alexandra Tejada is an Asian American visitor who got to experience the museum for the first time.
I really loved hearing how they put on events, especially for like the Stop Asian Hate, and then little seminars on like women's empowerment. There's so much more history and so much more involved in it.
Someone looking for better employment.
The museum teaches more than how people fought and what weapons were used. It talks about who those people were, shedding light on lesser-known histories. Jared Adriano was another visitor.
In general, Philippines tends to be underrepresented for a lot of areas, and so seeing it represented through martial arts, I found it to be wonderfully fantastic.
The Martial Arts History Museum is open Thursday to Sunday, 11 to 6. Reporting from Burbank, I'm Maximus Osborne.
Musician Harry Styles made a special announcement for a 4-month pregnant fan. In a TikTok, the artist made the gender reveal for SIDNEY, a fan who wanted to find out the news in fashion. Styles was on stage last Friday for his 15-night Love on Tour. The musician asked for his band to play music to tease fans. Styles worked up a drum roll and danced on stage. He announced it was a girl.
The Rockefeller Christmas tree has arrived. It's a sign of the holiday season installing the famous Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. The 82-foot Norway spruce weighs 14 tons. It came from Queensbury, New York. The tree is believed to be about 90 years old. That's about as long as the Rockefeller Christmas tradition itself. It will be ready for the lighting ceremony on November 30th.
The world's tallest woman recently boarded her first flight from her home in Turkey to San Francisco. Rumeysa Galgay is 7 feet tall. She's so tall because of Weaver syndrome, which causes bone overgrowth. Galgay shared photos from her trip aboard Turkish Airlines. The airlines removed several seats on the plane so she could rest comfortably on a stretcher during the 13-hour flight. She says the biggest challenge with flying is the loading and storage of her mobility aids.
After 25 years, Ash Ketchum has finally done it. He's the Pokemon World Champion. In the latest episode of Pokemon Ultimate Journeys, the series that was released in Japan, Ash's Pikachu defeats a Charizard belonging to Leon, the defending champion. This win was very big because of the losses he suffered through the years. He finally completed his dream when he first left Pallet Town back in 1997 in the first episode. The series is streaming in the US on Netflix with the episodes still to come.
That's all for us at Valley View News. I'm Giovanni Galvez.
And I'm Jesse Barrientos. For stories any time of the day, go to our website, csunvalleyview.edu. Thanks for watching.